Welcome back, everybody. I am so excited that you are here joining me for this particular episode. It's one that is so near and dear to my heart. I am so excited to share this human being with you, this person, her mission, her story, all the things. So I want to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Tabitha Rose. She is the founder of Life to Paper Publishing, Life to Legacy Foundation, the Bookshop, and the Life to Paper Book Festival. She is incredibly compassionate, intuitive, and she is deeply rooted in the meaning of legacy. Tabitha is committed to helping others put their life to paper. And she's so special to me because she is the heart, the soul, the mind, the magic behind my very first book, The Emotionally Intelligent Woman. I know if you've been hanging out in my world for any length of time, you've heard me talk about what it means for me to share this project with all of you. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Tabitha Rose to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shamla. I'm so excited to be here. I look forward to every conversation we have.
I do too. And I feel like that's where I want to start because throughout this journey, Tab, so many of my colleagues and my friends and my clients and so many people in my world have been, of course, very interested in the process and the journey of me writing my own book. How did I come to that? How did I choose who to work with? And one of the things I often share with whoever asks me and whoever will listen is that I knew I wanted to write a book for a long time. Mm-hmm. And probably like most people that do end up writing a book, I felt there was a book inside of me for a very, very long time. And when I finally got to this point in my life, which was, I guess it was over a year ago when I think about it, where I started to actively start reaching out to publishing companies and editors and publishers, and I started interviewing them. I interviewed several. And I came across your profile. I think it was a friend or a colleague or someone that was like, you should check out this woman, Tabitha Rose. She helped, a friend of mine write his book and he only has amazing things to say about her. And I did the thing that any savvy businesswoman would do, which is, creeped you on Instagram. Because that's the best thing to do these days. And, looked at your, like creeped you, like literally looked at your stories and all the things. And I came across this post where you shared what I thought was a very vulnerable and very powerful part of your own story, which I won't tell because it's your story. But it really struck a chord for me. And it said something to me about how you choose to show up in the world. And I remember thinking to myself, well, okay, I'll interview her. And if she shows up this way when we meet, and we met on Zoom, I remember it so well. And if she shows up this way on Zoom and she has the same level of vulnerability and power and presence and all of those things, then this is the woman and this is the company that I will work with. And of course, the rest is history because here we are, at the time this episode drops, the book, would have been published, available everywhere online. Books are sold and we're going to be hosting a powerful masterclass on February 9th. So we've had a year together and it's been incredible. So it's with deep gratitude that I welcome you to this podcast, to the community. I feel like you've been part of my community for the last year behind the scenes. And I'm excited to share your face, your voice, your mission, your heart with all the people that are so important to me. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's been a year. And we're working with you, getting to know you, having your expertise shared with me it's been transformative. Like I've shared with you before, I've seen the changes in my life that have taken place over this year, and they've been incredible. A true dream come true. That's why I felt completely aligned. I felt like when we met, I fell in love with your passion and your mission. I knew I could help you. And I had this feeling that you were put in my path for a reason, also for me, because I felt like I am one of the women that needs your book. I was exactly that. I'm your target reader. So
I remember you saying that.
Lit me up.
I remember you saying that. I could feel it. I felt it when we met. I felt it when we talked about, the the kind of book I wanted to write, the work that I do in the world, all of those sorts of things. It's like I saw this like twinkle in your eyes, and I just felt
Mhm.
like you really understood. I felt like you really understood um, the challenge of the woman that would pick up this book. Right. And
100%.
right. Like why she would pick up this book and why she would need this book and, all of those sorts of things. But before we talk about the book, where I really want to start this conversation is you. I know that my audience is dying to know, who is the woman behind this incredible publishing company that I've hired to work with me. Who did I collaborate with? Like right? Who did I invite into my sacred space? Because I really do think this was a sacred relationship. It was a very, very intimate journey of putting
Mhm.
together a book like this together. So I'd love for you to share with my audience, who are you really? And what do you do?
Thank you. So I help people put their life stories to paper, and now that's expanded to stories in general. Sometimes they're fictional. And then I help guide those stories to inspire hearts and minds around the world. So if I have the opportunity to meet with someone like yourself, and I feel that that individual, their mission is to help others. They're a giver and they want to help. I feel like that light goes off in my eyes. So life to paper came to be. It wasn't a goal I had.
Mm,
I wasn't coming out of university thinking this is what I'll be doing in the world. It was very different, but I say it just happened.
mhm,
Um, my grandmother had a story. I knew bits and pieces of it. She was looking to hire a ghostwriter. She'd thrown the word around a few times, and then one day I just said to her, "Why don't you let me do it?" And she agreed. I said, at least let me get started. I'll do the legwork, I'll gather the stories and then we'll maybe pass it on to an editor. For some reason, I just had the instincts about, what to do.
mhm,
I don't know how or why. So we did. And our process was very intimate. So we spent one on one time together in her kitchen on walks. We even took a trip. So that kind of, set the bar for how I went on to do the work with others. And that was one of the things with you. It was the pandemic. I
mhm,
was in a different city, different
mhm,
country. Were we
mhm,
going to have the opportunity to have those intimate conversations? But I knew because of how you show up and even showed up in the calls that we had, that we'd be able to achieve that level of intimacy.
mhm,
For
mhm,
some, it's not the case, but I could see for you that it was, and I
mhm,
didn't want that part of the process to be compromised because I feel like people have shared that the process was just as valuable as the book itself.
mhm,
The conversations that we have.
mhm.
So I had the feeling that we'd be able to achieve that. So that was what got me really excited. I said, okay, we can do this. You show up in such a way that I admired right away. And it had that thing that I said, she has that thing that I want. I can't
Mm,
exactly say what it is. Sometimes it's like, oh, I like her hair, or, she's got a nice house. All those things, yes, but it was something else.
mm.
And I
You know,
thought, someone who walks the walk as well, like so clearly. I could see that right away. I thought she's the real deal.
so as you're saying this, it's totally bringing me back to our first conversation. I think it was a dream session, which hopefully we'll talk
Mhm.
about at some point. I hope we'll talk about that because I think that's a really powerful part of your process. I think we were doing the dream session, and um I felt myself getting very emotional as we were talking um about the book. We were talking about the vision. We were talking about, what it would be like to put the story out there. And I remember this moment as we're in this conversation. It was, over video. It was a video conference, and we're having this conversation. And it was like this for like, and I often talk about fork in the road moments in our lives.
Mhm.
And it was one
Me
of those
too.
fork in the road moments for me because I was looking at you and I'm feeling like I started to get emotional again as you were talking just now, but I was looking at you and I could like feel how present you were with me. during that call, and it was scary. Like you were so present, um, that it scared me because I was like, oh shit, like if I actually decide to work with this woman, like what kind of book am I going to write? Like, is it going to be super vulnerable? And do I really want to do that? I
Mm-hmm.
remember thinking that. And interviewed some other really wonderful people as well, but I didn't have that same feeling with
Mm-hmm.
any of the other people that I had interviewed along this journey. And I got off that call and I actually talked to one of my friends and colleagues, and I told her, and she's a therapist as well. And I was like, well, here's what happened. And, it was really vulnerable and it was pretty scary. And I don't know if this is the book I want to write. And she was like, but Shamla, this is the book you're called to write.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, and she knew, she's like, you sit on it. And I remember I was like, I'm going to take the weekend. I'm going to, decide.
Yeah.
She's like, you do what you need to do. But I know this is the woman you're going to work with to write this book. Like there's no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I had, talked with her about the other interviews I'd had, and she was like, this is the book you're called to write. This is the woman that's going to help you write it. Um, and I just, like it's not often that you feel something so profoundly.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that so profoundly. And part of it was fear, which we talk about so much in the book,
Oh yeah, an
right?
imposter
Like,
syndrome.
right. All of that, right? Like part of it
Absolutely.
was
And
like,
you
oh my
knew
gosh.
that.
Yeah.
I remember you
Mm-hmm.
saying every time you're about to level up, there it is, imposter syndrome. And that's been like a tape replaying in my head. When it happens to me, I think, okay, it's just you. You're here.
Right.
I,
Right.
I see you, but
Right.
moving on. I'm
Right.
still leveling up.
Right. So I think, I want to go back. I bring that up with my audience. I bring that up with you because there's certain things that are really hard to put into words because there are things I think we experience with our hearts, and that day when we had our dream session, there was something that happened internally for me that was really difficult for me to describe. But as I reflect on who you are and how you've shown up for every single one of our meetings, the ups and downs of writing a book, because let me tell you, friends, there are ups and downs, and writing and publishing a book during a pandemic is interesting to say the least. Lots of things did not go as planned, and lots of things changed, and you supported me with so much grace and compassion through all of that. And I think it really speaks to that question that really fascinates me about people. It's who you are. I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit more about your personal journey, what you've chosen to overcome in your own life, the adversities that you've chosen to come through, and how that shapes the way that you show up for your own mission.
Mm. Um, I tell the story, I remember one of the earliest emotions I felt. Um, I felt very strongly, and when I finally learned there was a word for it, I needed to let my mom know, was lonely.
Mm.
And I remember very clearly being about 5 years old and sitting at the dinner table with her and putting my head on my hands and saying, lonely, lonely. Like I just felt lonely, and I wasn't alone. I wasn't left alone. I wasn't, abandoned in that sense. Like I had, parents caring for me. I went to school. I had friends, but I felt this loneliness.
And
The
you were 5.
loneliness. Yeah, yeah. I needed her to know. I've been feeling it. Now I learned the word associated for it. So now I could express that. And she kind of brushed it off as, you're not alone. Like, you're fine. You're fine. That was, my mom, that was the best she could do at the time,
Yep.
right? Just
What
to
you knew.
just reassure me. And I'd say the loneliness persisted throughout my life. And I found sort of some comfort in socializing. When I got into university, it was like I can socialize. And what came along with that was drinking. And then I didn't feel alone. It was like the medicine for loneliness.
Mhm.
So, of course, naturally, I did that as much as I could and as often as I could
Mm.
until it stopped working,
Mm.
until actually it drove me completely in the opposite direction that I intended. It drove me into deeper loneliness
Mm. Mhm.
and the realization, of that, because I don't think as it's happening, I really understood it was. And once I did, I knew that, this was something I needed to change. It wasn't easy. It took
Mm-hmm.
several attempts. I
Mm-hmm.
think letting go of like this idea of life that I had for myself,
Mm-hmm.
I still held on to that, like those memories of me, the socializing and the comfort and the peace and, the acceptance I felt. I didn't believe that I could find that anywhere else. So
Mm-hmm.
it took a
Mm-hmm.
while, but once I really, and I don't feel like it was a decision, but there was something divine about, and the moment of grace when
Mm-hmm.
I truly like took steps into sobriety. Like
Mm-hmm.
it didn't feel like it was completely me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is something I know you shared about seeing a post that was vulnerable, and that was probably about my sobriety.
It was.
Um,
Yep.
at first, I didn't want to share about it
Mm-hmm.
completely, like radical honesty. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to. I didn't know how to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but honesty is, as well as it's a fundamental pillar of your program. It's a
Mm-hmm.
fundamental part of sobriety too.
Mm.
And that doesn't always mean sharing everything, but I
Yep.
just felt for me, it was important to share.
Mm-hmm.
And that was another moment of grace as well
Mm-hmm.
when I decided to start sharing publicly about it.
Was
It
that one
just,
of the first times like you shared it on social? I
I
don't know. I mean,
think,
that's when I came across, like it was like divine timing, right? Because
yeah.
that's when I found you, and it was one of your most recent posts, cuz you know what I mean? Like I found it in your feed and I read it.
Mhm.
Um
That was actually not the first post. I know which one you're thinking about. And that was
mhm.
like a big milestone, like one of the year
Mhm.
milestones.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was before that, but yeah, when I did share, it didn't feel forced. It felt right. And
Mhm.
I also thought about the fact how I encourage others to share their stories and their deepest truths and their struggles. The
Mhm.
hero's journey is about, like, the hero falls and maybe
Yeah.
falls again, but what do they do next?
Yes.
The next
Yes.
right thing, right?
Mhm.
Is really what matters. And how could I encourage other people to do that if I wasn't doing it myself? But again, I don't force anyone either. I tell them if it feels right, like now
Mhm.
feels like the time to share.
Mhm.
I've had people I've worked with that, we've gotten to the point of, I'm writing their memoir. We've got to the point, it's their first draft, and I have this sense that something's missing.
Mm.
And then we've just been having like a friendly conversation, nothing to do with the book, just, where we happen to meet. And this one person in particular, and then all of a sudden I start sharing a bit about my life, they start sharing, and I realize this book is missing a chapter.
Right.
This book is missing a
Right.
whole chapter. And they were emotional, and they shared why, their hesitation to put this out there. And I said, do you think this is going to help people or hurt people? And I remember
Mhm.
he looked at me with tears in his eyes and he said, I think this is going to help people.
Mm.
And then there was chapter 8.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's what's so interesting about it, Tab, is that like I have a coaching practice and I have a psychotherapy
Hmm.
clinic, right? And at my
Hmm.
psychotherapy clinic, like I don't practice psychotherapy anymore, but I train my team, I supervise my team and this and that. And I have newer like some of my team members on the psychotherapy side are newer psychotherapists. And one of the scariest things about being a new psychotherapist is that you recognize that the people that you're sitting in the room with, whether that's
Hmm.
virtual or in person, but the people that you're sitting in the room with, um, like need and deserve healing. And
Hmm.
in order for you to be able to support that healing, you have to have the capacity to hold the space for them. Like you have to let them know that it's really safe for them to explore the darkest parts of their lives if that's what they need to do
Hmm.
and if that's what they choose to do. And I think why I go back to that post that I saw on Instagram, as I don't know, as small as that might seem to anyone listening, but the fact that you shared that and you were willing to share your journey of sobriety, to me, told me that it was safe for me to share my darkest struggles as well with you. right? Like it said to me, this is a safe space. Like she has the capacity to hold you as you journey through this process, and I think we've talked about, becoming the woman who could tell this story. Like that's what writing the book was for me. Right. Like writing the book was not just about writing the book, and it's beautiful and I'm so proud of it. And, all of the
Me too.
things. Right. But it was
Yeah.
like it really, like at the end of the day, if I like, take a look at my life as a whole, writing the book was really about becoming the woman who could tell this story.
Mhm.
And the role that you play with your authors is so critical. I'm going to use the word sacred. I keep using the word sacred because it's what comes to mind. It's so sacred. And it's similar to what I say to my clinicians, the role that we play with our clients, it's sacred because
Mhm.
we have to have the capacity to hold that kind of space for them to heal and to
Absolutely.
grow and to become whoever it is that they desire to become in this lifetime and on their
Mhm.
journey with you. But I had a desire to become someone in this last year. I
Mhm.
didn't know it. Like I didn't know it when we met,
Mhm.
right? But it was there, right? And I needed to know that you could hold me and my story and my life, and I'm gonna get emotional, but I needed
Me
to
too.
know that you could do that. And I
Mhm.
think that's really what I want. I don't know. I wanted to just share the process, but I want to share you with my audience because, you're in the acknowledgments of the book, of
I
course.
know it's
Of course. Come on. I
made my
mean,
heart
that
sing.
was just a no-brainer for me, but totally emotional as I was writing it. And whenever people ask me about you, like the first words out of my mouth is, well, I have to start by saying she's a very special human.
Mhm. Thank you.
And I really believe that, like wise beyond your years and, a capacity, I think, to hold people's stories,
Thank you.
which is
Thank
really
you.
powerful. Mhm.
It's always been as much like I say, as much as holding the book in my hands is such a special moment. Those moments we share one on one are um they're, everything to me.
Mhm.
Everything. Like
Yeah.
that's why I feel I'm so honored because I personally get so much from those conversations.
Mm.
And I feel like again with my belief in God and the universe that each person's put in my path for a reason.
Mhm.
That's why I get those goosebump moments.
Mhm.
And that's why I think the process, it's really important. It's like a matchmaking process. Like I
Mm.
say to people, it's really important to find that person that you both get that feeling. Like,
Yeah.
while you had those initial conversations, that you both feel like, yes, right away.
Yes. Mhm. That's a
Um,
great way to put it.
yeah.
It really is. It really, really is.
That's how I feel with the dream session. And we did one that, if it happens during that dream session, then
Mhm.
and if
Mhm.
not, that's okay. Like I'm always open to sharing, some other professionals that I know and trust, and some
Yes.
which are even on my team, but they,
Yes.
work separately doing some of the ghostwriting work and editing work. And I'm so happy to share their contacts too, because I think there's a right person for everyone.
I agree.
Hmm.
For our audience, I know that my audience is super curious about what this process has been like, what it's like to work with you. Could you share? There's a couple of things. One, could you share a bit about what the dream session looks like? And
Hmm.
the second thing I know that my audience is so curious about is what are some of the different ways that you can support a thought leader in putting their message out into the world?
Hmm. Okay, so the dream session came to be because it just did. Then I realized, okay, I should put a name on it. Because every initial conversation I was having with an individual, what it shaped up to be was we talk about the things I love the most, dreams and stories. So
Mhm.
talk about and I ask for, the dream, beyond the book,
Mhm.
like that individual's dream for themselves and for the world they want to see, the future that they're looking toward, and what part they have to play in that.
Yes.
And So we talk a lot about that because I feel like that ultimate dream should inform every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's path with us is a little different, I feel,
Yes.
because
Right.
it's based on that ultimate dream. And so we go through like the dream conversation, and I personally align with people, like I said, who want to help others. Like their mission is help. They're a
Mm-hmm.
helper.
Mm-hmm.
And even those, like I say, that we kind of have different categories. I hate to put people in boxes of any kind, but I've just seen that sort of there's those who are kind of rising stars.
Yes.
So they're just on the brink of their career as someone who helps or a change maker.
Mm-hmm.
And the book is a good way to kind of build credibility, put their story out there, and tell people, okay, where they've been, and where they're going, and based on where they've been, what kind of message they have to share. Because like they've really done a thorough self inventory, and they can really see, like, often like you said, the gift is right next to the wound. So, and that's just the same for me. The loneliness like drove me to, I really want to understand people on a very deep level. Like I want to feel like the opposite of loneliness is connection, and the opposite of addiction is connection as well. So it totally makes sense.
It does.
And then there's those like yourself, so the experts, and you've been helping people in your respective field for X number of years, several years. And your knowledge and expertise is very clearly carved out, and to the point like you, where you've created an actual blueprint. And it's over time, time and time again, people have experienced a transformation in their life as a result of that. So and that, along with your story and your why, I think is really important, because every bit of that expertise, there's a part of your life that kind of matches with it. Like you've been through it. Like you say again and again, you're on the exact, I quote, same damn journey, which
you can pretty much quote the book. Yeah.
And there's, how this all started was, I started working with my grandmother. And then I thought at first I was going to be basically working with old people. I love them. I love the elderly. I love spending time with them. I like listening to them, like just soaking up every bit of their wisdom.
Yeah.
So I thought it was going to be, working with, the beloved, helping keep people's family history alive, and even, sharing some stories with them that they may not know, because that person, their grandparent or parent, feels for some reason more comfortable sharing them with me. But it just so happened that, people started approaching me who were even younger than me and wanted to put their stories to paper. So, but I still do work with families and work on private memoirs. Like I was just recently in Winnipeg doing one, and I was like, oh, sitting around a family dinner table, listening to them tell stories, and there were tears and there was laughter. It was, I love that. There's some that don't fit into any category. Like they're just the like sui generis, and they're not like anyone else. They don't want their book to look like any other book. They're very much they very much stand out in that sense. So there's different kinds of categories. I mean, there's some people I've worked with on like where I've been very much the ghost writer. So, not credited, and they're sort of the icons. And what I do appreciate about those individuals is they're very clear, their clarity. They know exactly the book they want to write. And often it's because they've written books before, and then this is their third or fourth book, and they come to me and they're very clear. So that helps. But if that's not the case, that's like what the dream session helps start with, is helping get clear on the book that you do want to write. Is it a memoir? Is it a knowledge share nonfiction? There's sort of different structures for every single type of book. And then, but then ultimately what is the book that you see yourself putting out into the world? Like, what does it include, and how do we build a narrative? So often in that dream session, we'll carve out the outline for a book, because we'll spend enough time together that I'll get a sense of like, okay, this is, at least a rough outline, and we can go from there. So after dream session, if the individual feels like, okay, this is my person. This is it. We'll, continue our work together, and we'll have, the dream and the outline for the book. And if not, at least they'll have an outline, and they'll have a better sense of, where they're going. And then I'll share some context to perhaps help them find the person that's meant to help them too.
Yeah, it was so, like, it was a scary process for me, for sure. Not the vulnerability piece, but also, like, in some ways it really felt like I was putting my life's work into somebody else's hands, right? Like, it really very much felt like,
Mm-hmm.
And our process for writing the book was a very interesting one. And I might even, just in the interest of time, I might do a follow-up episode to this at some point, just sharing with my audience what that process was like. But I know you've got all sorts of different processes, but what I found personally fascinating was coming up with the outline, coming up with the structure, plugging in
Mm-hmm.
the pieces that were my teaching content, right? Like
Yeah.
plugging in the pieces that I would consider sort of thought leadership or expertise or whatever you want to call it. And the way that I think you called it like mining the stories,
Yeah.
right? Like you
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
pull, it was like you literally were like pulling the stories like from me, from my history, from my experiences, all of that. And you and your team, you just sort of wove them into the broader narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just, the way you pulled, like I really had a hard time letting go at that point, because I was like, how is this going to come together? Like,
Yeah.
how is this going to be coherent? How is this going to make sense? Like, is the reader going to be totally lost in a world of like emotional intelligence and Shamla's like struggles when she was first married? Like, how is any of this going to make sense? And then I remember when you presented me with the manuscript, the first draft, and I went through it and I was like, oh, this is like magic. Like somehow it all weaved. And of course there was a back and forth, like you would
Mm-hmm.
expect. But for me to be able to see the bare bones of my own story as it intersects with my mission
Mm-hmm.
was like crazy. Like I literally have a lump in my throat just saying that sentence, because and you know what, Tab, like I feel like for my audience, for the parts of my audience that would be interested in writing a book,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm so fortunate that I have so many incredible like friends and colleagues that are truly thought leaders, that are truly experts in their fields, that are doing
Mm-hmm.
incredible, amazing things, like powerful, mission driven women. Like I would imagine them putting out a book like this, where it's like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
intersecting, right? Like they're like who
Yeah.
they are in this world and what they're called to do. And
Absolutely.
like I just love the way that you and your team like brought that together with such clarity. And I also remember thinking, but like they're not therapists, like how are they going to help me write this book? Like how will this happen? And it totally did. Like like collaborative effort for sure, but
Absolutely. That's
it
what I
was
love the
amazing.
most.
Yeah.
I felt like you were there every step of the way. And that's not always the case. In some cases, the individual act, they really are a lot more hands off. Um, and that's okay. But when, whatever that person, whatever they imagine the process looking like to them. So if they're like yourself, I felt like we are very much co-pilots,
Mm.
and that was good. You were really, really there every step of the way. I have to tell you though, I know you're not alone. There is this period where I don't know if you've experienced this as a therapist as
Mm.
well, where you may spend, maybe you have more frequent sessions with someone,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe there's a period where there's
Mm-hmm.
a lag, like you don't
Yep.
meet, and they feel kind of like a withdrawal, or like
Mm.
a, oh my gosh, what what's going on.
Yep.
And I feel that too. There's like a, wait, you just, we had all these intimate conversations, and then you
Yes.
kind of disappeared,
Yeah,
Tab.
that totally
and
happened. Yes.
and the thing is, for
I was like, do
me,
you still care about me and my book? Like, wait, what about my story, Tab?
because we go off to actually,
Yeah.
develop the book. And
Yes.
and I know, okay, I have to be honest, the first books that I wrote, I had that oh shit feeling of like,
Yeah.
I hadn't done it enough times to say to this person, trust me, your book's going to
Yeah.
get written. It's going to be
Yeah.
great. Because until I've done it enough times, I can't, but I had the same feeling. And then once I, done enough times, I'm able to confidently say like, trust me, this period, this feeling is normal. It's kind of like maybe like a hangover
Yeah.
from,
It's like a
from all the
vulnerability hangover. I'm like, I
hangover.
poured my heart out to you. Where are
And
you?
then you're just gone. Are you even going to write my book? It's so totally normal. It's still now I've done enough times to confidently say like, yes, this I can, and especially with yours, it was so clear.
Mm.
It was so clear. I had
It felt so
absolute
muddy to me,
clarity.
right? And I was like muddy. I was like, this is muddy. This is like messy. What are we doing? Like, let's just scrap the whole thing. Forget it. Like, we don't need to do this.
Well, I felt so clear because I felt really clear in the roadmap. I felt really clear in the structure and the bones and
Mm-hmm.
all the confidence and faith in the world in you and your
Mm.
expertise. Like there was,
Mm.
that was absolutely clear. And then as your stories kind of poured out, that
Yeah.
mining process, then it was even more clear too.
Yeah.
How perfect, well they paired with your expertise because
Mm-hmm.
you'd been through it yourself. And then I
Yep.
saw myself in you too.
Mm.
I really felt, in those very vulnerable moments you shared, I felt like I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
That's been me.
Can I ask you something? And I didn't intend to ask you this question, but you're talking about this. And I think for those that are listening and that haven't yet picked up the book, or that are deciding on whether or not they're going to join us for, depending on when you're listening to this episode, or if you're catching it on YouTube or wherever you catch this, the book is published on February 7th. Tab and I are co-hosting a masterclass on February 9th. We're celebrating the launch of the book. I'm going to be doing some teaching. It's going to be amazing. I hope you'll buy the book and I hope you'll join us for that. But for those of you that just need a little bit more, I would love if you could share, like, is there one story, like one of my own, like, oh shit moments? Because there were so many oh shit moments in my life that I talk about in the book, but was there one that really resonated for you? Like, I love how you said, I could see myself in you.
Oh, you know what I was thinking about? I was thinking about just the tension with your husband,
Yeah.
the tension in the room.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I was sharing that specifically, I was thinking of, um, you know, at night in bed,
Mm-hmm. I was thinking of
where,
that same story.
oh my gosh, and how much I've been there and just like curled up in a ball and just, the inside of me is like a hot stew. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
just, the feelings are just so real.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, just my inability to communicate,
Yeah.
with
Yeah. How
confidence.
immobilizing it is, right? Like you literally feel completely stuck.
No, my emotions are just amok, and
Mm.
I can't get I can't get I just, yeah, totally out of control inside, and then outwardly just frozen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not able to move and just speak or anything, or
Mm-hmm.
just going in circles
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
communication too.
Mm-hmm.
But I really felt you, and saw myself in your life
Mm.
at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. It was,
How
yeah,
many times
just,
I've been there.
yeah.
And I can say I have not been there in the past year.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm. We've
fact,
talked
even in
about
my
that.
new
Yeah.
relationship, like the communication is amazing. It's the best I've ever experienced. And I have to say that I give credit where credit is due, and it's to him, that individual. And
Mm.
I give credit to myself
Mm-hmm.
because I see how I show up and it's
Mm-hmm.
different.
You're the
Yeah.
emotionally intelligent woman.
I'm getting there, I'm getting there, but like you say, like do the work every
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It
I'm
truly
willing
is.
because I see the results in all aspects of
Mm-hmm.
my life.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
saw how the holidays went this year with family.
Yes.
There were those moments where I felt like the rising tension, up my
Yeah.
chest into my throat. I didn't have those. And usually
Right.
that would be every year.
Right. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I know. I've been there, as you know. I've totally, totally been there. Yeah, it's been, oh my gosh, it's been such an incredible journey, one that I will not soon forget.
Me too.
We're already being asked if there's a follow-up. I don't know if you
Yeah,
saw that.
I
Those
know.
comments
I
were
did. I did.
there's
I
going to be
did.
a follow-up for little girls. So maybe we
You
might
know
have
how excited I
I,
am for that.
I do know how excited. I do know how excited you are for that. I'm just trying to soak in the magic of what it feels like to birth your first book.
Yeah.
And it feels incredible. It really feels incredible. So before we wrap up our time together, I really would love for you to share with our audience, where can they find you? How can they stay connected to you? If they're interested in working with you, what is the best and easiest way to do that? I'd love for you to share all those details.
Mhm. Well, take a look at our website, lifetopaper.com. You can get a sense for who we work with, how we help. So the different ways, because I know people, you might be listening and you think that you really want to write the book yourself. You want to go through that process. So I do help with book coaching as well, just to for support, accountability. We recently, our new offer is something called Launch Squad. So it's a team effort. So a team gets behind you and helps support you in any and every way that you need in order to put your book out into the world in a way that's meaningful. So that includes, copywriting and even helping individuals prepare to share their story on stage. So to
Mm,
craft your message for the stage. So it's a package that kind of helps brand you,
mm,
you and your book,
mhm.
and help you get prepared to step on more stages in front of more cameras. So there's kind of a wide array of services we offer. One of the ones that really lights me up is the uh, helping people tell their stories, on camera.
Mm,
So putting together, these life story docs is
mhm,
something I'm really passionate about too, and
mhm,
I get really involved with those. Like you
mhm.
saw, like I like to be present at every single one. I've realized the conversations that we have, like now, like they're pretty special.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll get off, a session with someone or leave their home. I'll say, if only the world could have heard that
Mm,
conversation,
mm,
if they
yeah.
could just get a glimpse into what I experience with these amazing individuals.
Mhm,
So that's what
mhm,
I aim to do with the life story docs, or the story docs,
mm.
is just to capture some of those conversations that we have, let people in a little bit.
It's amazing, amazing. And on Instagram, I know we'll put
Mm.
everything in the show notes for our audience. If anyone is listening and you've got any questions for me in terms of what it was like for me to work with Tabitha and her team, I would be happy to answer them. You know where to find me. You can reach out. I adore you. Like I absolutely adore you. Grateful that you joined me for today's episode. Thank you.
Oh, Shamala, you're a true blessing in my life. And I'm so grateful every day. I don't want the journey to end. I know it's not going to end.
It's not ending. No, no, no.
You've
You've
got
got
me
me for
for
life
life.
now. Yeah. 100%. All right, my
Absolutely.
friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.